hummingbird. Has everybody got hummingbirds yet? Raise your hand. Oh, that's only not as many as I would have guessed. They're on their way back. Oddly, I saw my very first one. It's not like you can sit and stare at the feeders for more than 8 hours a day. But anyway, I was having, 1 week ago today, Easter morning, I was sipping my first cup of coffee, and one little male flew in, and they got a good belly full, and then took off, and I don't know if he came back or not. But they are in the valley, they are working their way through, and again, you can't watch your feeders at all moments. You've got a life, but you can keep checking the sugar water, and is it getting lower, and keeping it fresh. So they are back. I had mine a week ago, like I said, it was Easter morning. Where are we going? Hummingbirds, believe it or not, there's over 330 species of hummingbirds, all in the New World, all in either North America or South America. The bulk are in South America, and half of those live at the equatorial belt. They're either 10 degrees above the equator, 10 degrees below. So if you want to check off your hummingbird list, you got to go a little further south to find them. They're out there, and that's where they predominantly are. We're lucky that we have the one that comes here. There's 6 or 7 species that come up on the Pacific side. They just fly straight up the coastline. The range of colors in hummingbird plumage exceeds the color diversity of all of the bird species combined. There's over 10,000 species of bird on this planet. But within that range of 350 hummingbirds, there's more color than in all the rest. And there are all kinds of colors. So Costa Rica has like 53 different species. So that plan your next trip, Costa Rica, and send me a postcard. And tell the Costa Rican tourist agency, oh, he sent me down here to look at hummingbirds. The smallest, if you really want to see the smallest hummingbird, you have to go to Cuba for that one. It's called the bee hummingbird. It weighs less than 1 dime. If you got a dime in your pocket, like we all carry back up, what do we do with these anymore? You know, we used to walk around with a whole pocket full of change, and we'd stand somewhere and jingle our change because it made us feel wealthy. Now you get change, and what am I supposed to do with this? Anyway, you can use it to compare the way a bee hummingbird is less than a dime. I don't make this up, and it's the smallest vertebra, and it's an animal with a spinal cord like I've got, and like you guys have. On Earth. So if you just got to see that little tiny hummingbird, it's about the size of a bee, you go to Cuba. And then the largest is the northern giant hummingbird. It's roughly 8 inches long. It weighs, it's about the size of a sparrow, and it weighs the equivalent of 4 quarters. Wow, I've got 4 quarters. So it's roughly this much. Did you click it? No, you didn't. So it's roughly this weight. But the point is this, hummingbirds simply don't weigh much. They absolutely don't. They're just flying little fluffs. We'll get to our hummingbird. That's ruby throat. You may or may not have them yet, but you will. What happens this time of year, they're passing through. It's typically the males. Warblers do the same thing. The males pass through first to claim home territory where their home is. And some of these may have been born in southern Canada. So there's passing through, and they'll stop by with luck for a little something to eat, just like when we go to Florida, we stop at all the Denny's or whatever. Buc-ee's is the new trend. I need to go to Buc-ee's. But anyway, they weigh the equivalent of 2 dimes. 2 dimes, they're heavy. We pass these around, just pass them to your neighbors all around. That weighs more than our hummingbird. I used to show this to kids at times, and they were like, oh, but it's true. Where else? But you can see them with kind of a black throat, and that's just the way the light flashes off their throat feathers are called the gorget, and that's just the way the light hits it. If you know an indigo bunting, a gorgeous, gorgeous dark blue bird, if the light hits it right, it looks dark blue, but most of the time it looks jet black, and it's just their feathers are iridescent. And here's a female. Females have white throats, so it's very easy to tell a male from a female when everything gets going. Typically the males pass through first, and then the females pass through too, because they know what's waiting for them at home, back at their home territory. But then by the time we get to mid-May, those are your hummingbirds. Migration's over. So that's the female. They're in the biological group of potiforms, which is Greek for footless, but they're not footless. It was a bad term. Someone needs to fix that. They have feet. They just have very tiny legs, barely enough room to get a leg band on them. So they're more legless than footless. You'll never see them walking anywhere. They don't need to. They're closely related to chimney swifts for the same reason. But they can't perch. They have tiny legs. So that's the proper term, but not the best term. Let me introduce you to a man named Lawrence Webster. I got curious about this and started doing some digging around. He lived in Boston. He and his wife had huge flower gardens, and hummingbirds prefer flowers to sugar water because flowers have nectar and lots of insects. That's what they eat. But he sketched out what was the very first hummingbird feeder. And he took it to his friends at MIT and said, can you make this for me? And they did. And so that's an example of what he wanted. He hoped to have a feeder or someplace the birds would become still, long enough to at least look at them, rather than that's a normal hummingbird life. So that was his goal, so he and his wife could sit and have a hummingbird just come up and feed right in front of them. And word started spreading around Boston, and people kept coming. They wanted to see this. And finally, word got out to National Geographic magazine. This is my copy, August 1947. These have the first photographs of hummingbirds in flight, just right there at the feeder. It was the first time it had ever been done. And because we all know, we all have National Geographic. You may have National Geographic August 1947 at home. Go look it up. Anyway, once word got out through National Geographic, everybody wanted a hummingbird feeder. So it became a national hobby beginning in the 1950s, when people were scrambling to make all the different kind of hummingbird feeders that are found today that hold sugar water and a place for the hummingbird just to either sit and perch and drink or just hover right there and drink like with his. So again, go home and search your basement. You probably haven't thrown it away. For some reason, you may get 6 magazines and you toss them all, but you can't throw away a National Geographic. Goodness, and so you save these. Down in my basement, there's stacks and stacks of them. Whoever inherits my house, they'll have a bunch of National Geographics sitting around. But anyway, August 1947. I love this story. I took that photograph at a bumper sticker at my Kroger's parking lot several years ago. You never know when your story is truly over. Something may happen to you today or tomorrow that totally changes your life. And you'll be so into it, so happy with it. Why haven't I been doing this all along? Well, this was what happened with, that's Bob Sargent on the right and his wife Martha on the left. I took that photograph. They visited Ives in 2009. Bob was an electrician. Spent his entire life involved in the electrical world, and he was slowly getting close to retirement, so he started spending a little more time at home with Martha. and watching her bird feed, and she had all kinds of bird feeders, but the hummingbird feeder, he would look at that hummingbird feeder and come up with question. So Martha didn't know the answers. He started calling around to the local bird people. They didn't know the answers. And he finally worked his way up to the Smithsonian. They didn't know the answers to his questions. How long do they live? Who raises the young? Where do they nest? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so he got a federal permit to figure out a way to catch a hummingbird and put one of those tags on it. And with a number, and it's like my license plate, no one else has it. But every hummingbird got an official number once it got tagged. So he figured out how to do it, how to catch it, how to put the tag in. The tags are tiny little rings, and he became so knowledgeable. Now, sadly, he passed away. Write about him in my third book, Ephemeral by Nature. Everything's ephemeral. Anyway, he passed away a few years ago, but he gained so much knowledge on ruby-throated hummingbirds that he literally wrote the book on them. You can go online and find his book, Ruby-Throated Hummingbird by Robert Sargent, his formal name. And a lot of the things I use in this talk is from his book. He figured all this out and watched and learned how to be a hummingbird expert, which he was. When he came to Iams, when he was for the Hummingbird Festival in 2009, and he talked, and it was wonderful, everything he knew. Okay, one of the things we know, when they are perched, sitting there, they look so incredibly frail. That's a photograph sent to me by Betty Thompson, and with 70 heartbeats a minute. That's pretty close to our heart rate. So it's that, but we don't look frail, but anyway, every now and then they can perch. They can't walk, remember. But when they crank up, their hearts absolutely fill their chest. And when they crank up, they can do 1,200 beats a minute. If you were a doctor with a little tiny stethoscope and could put it against their chest, you would hear. So that's how fast their heart rate is. And I took this photo that looks like a dragonfly. Anyway, 90 to 200 wing beats per second. So that's why even when my click, I caught the wing in two positions at once. That's how fast it's moving. So they're zipping around. That's why they do keep coming to your feeders. Even in the afternoon, your feeder's like a cup of coffee. But mostly they're going to flower, but mostly, and they're looking for insects. They can burn 645 calories per hour. A Big Mac's only $5.50, so we'd have to eat a Big Mac every hour just to kind of have enough energy in us to do this. But anyway, this one's coming to land at a field. And this is a friend's house of mine, and she has a pollinator garden all around her where she likes to sit. There's a hummingbird feeder right above her chair there. And they will visit 1,000 to 2,000 flowers every day. Constantly going to flowers because they really do eat insects. All those little small bugs. Don't throw away your pesticides. There is no pest. A caterpillar is not a pest. A caterpillar is either bird food or a butterfly. So it's not a pest. Just don't think about it that way. Hummingbirds are really, I read this somewhere. Hummingbirds are insectivores with a sweet tooth. That's the best way to describe them. They do have a sweet tooth. They may belly up on all the insects, the tiny ones flying around your house, the mites, the fruit flies. I think I have fruit flies in the kitchen right now. I need to get my hummingbird to come inside. Mosquitoes. They'll even go to spider webs. I have seen this. I got some spider webs on my windows. I leave them alone. They're there for the hummingbirds. Anyway, the hummingbird, something's wrapped up. It's the spider's supper. It's his leftovers. And a hummingbird will come in and grab it and take off with it and eat it. And that spider goes, hey, what did I do to you? Gee, but that spider needs to worry, it eat it too. So. You may see this some morning if you get up early, a hummingbird just hanging off your feeder or hanging off a branch. It's not dead, it's asleep or in torpor. That's kind of, it's not like, it's similar to hibernation where you shut down all of your metabolism, just the rest. I think I go into torpor every night right after Jeopardy, to be honest. So I can understand that. Anyway, but you may see this someday, and a bird, when it locks on, it's locked on. It doesn't matter. So most often a hummingbird would be upright, locked on, and it's not till the birds lock on to their perches, so they can nap during the daytime. But as soon as they lift up the locking mechanism, let's go. So that's a bird in torpor. And this is what is happening now. The green area is where they nest. So you can see all the way up into southern Canada. The blue area is where they spend their winters. So they're even wintering, and if you want to plan to go into Miami, Key West, you can find our hummingbirds there next winter. And the yellow area is just the ones that are over further to the west, can just migrate straight north. But all the others have to shoot across the Gulf of Mexico. They do cross, it's do or die, because this is the longest flight they do all year. And they do it twice, in the fall and south, and in this time of year north. They have to crawl, their basic flight speed is 30 miles an hour, but a good tailwind pushes them. So when they're on the Yucatan Peninsula and are ready to move, and are ready to shoot across the Gulf, they'll wait for a push. They'll wait for push behind them, and that's when they launch and take off with luck and get all the way across the Gulf of Mexico. Bless their hearts. Anyway, I get really anxious for hummingbirds in February. I'm not, the older you get, the less you like winter. All your joints hurt. So all you young folks, do anything you want now, but eventually go, oh my knee, I can't move. Anyway, that's what happens the older you get. So February, I'm going, where are the hummingbirds? Where are the hummingbirds? I want some, pick me up. So if you go to a website called Journey North and look for the hummingbird map, it's current. And I took, these are two screenshots. It can take them 18 to 24 hours to fly across that Gulf of Mexico, and they will start early. They'll be in February. They're already starting to line up along our Gulf Coast, looking for flowers, looking for hummingbird feeders. So if you live along the Gulf Coast, you'll be putting your feeders out so much earlier, and so that's a good idea of where they're at and how they get the data. How Journey North gets the data. If one flies to your house, and you see it, you just go to Journey North and type in your location. And they will click and it becomes a spot. So it's all first-hand news. And then by early April, and that's where we're at, you can see they've now worked their way up through Tennessee and starting up into Virginia, Pennsylvania, and in the Midwest. So they're already on the move. I saw my first one a week ago. Like I said, as soon as you get home, get your feeders out. And you may see one very soon. And again, in the beginning, it's a slow trickle up to get there. When you put your feeders out, the rule of thumb is crazy day to crazy day. That is April Fool's Day, first day of April, and unto Halloween. But our climate's changing, and so they're coming along a little earlier, and they're also staying around a little longer. So we're warmer than we once were. But anyway, we're just remember April 1st to Halloween. This is, I have a red buckeye, and a red buckeye is kind of a short tree or a tall shrub. It's not like yellow buckeye. Growing in my wooded area. I don't really have a yard, I have a wooded area. And when it starts to bloom, and it usually starts to bloom late March, I go, okay, before we were doing feeders, they've done studies that the hummingbird follows the blooming of red buckeye. So as red buckeye blooms a little further north, and it does, it would be blooming along the Gulf Coast or much earlier, but the hummingbirds are soon to follow. But it's a red tubular plant that is made for hummingbirds. They'll stick their bills inside to get that little sip of nectar at the end of the long tubular red flower. And the flower only provides a sip. It's not like a feeder. They would just want sip, 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 so because they want the hummingbird to go flower, 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 and spread the pollen. So the hummingbirds are really being pollinators and getting that tiny sip of nectar. And then blah, 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 blah. Here's a few, anyway, as I said earlier, the males tend to arrive first. I took that photo. And as far as your sugar water, it's simple. 4 to 1, 4 parts water. Hot water is better because the sugar dissolves quicker. And 1 part sugar. I started making it up at the end of March and making extra and keeping it in the refrigerator. But it's just 4 to 1, 4 to 1. And as far as cleaning, the same thing watchings. You don't want to feed them foul. You don't want to feed them foul sugar water because it will sour. And you can even see it looks a little milky. Or you can smell it. It looks a little fermented. And you don't want a drunk hummingbird either. So I take them down. I've got several feeders. I just keep rotating. And keep them always one fresh, clean one ready to go out for each tour. But to clean it best is to soak it in 4 to 1 with white vinegar. 4 parts water. Doesn't have to be hot. Doesn't have to be hot, but it can be hot. It'll all dissolve. Not boiling hot, just hot water from the sink. And 1 part white vinegar. Here's some of the other flowers they love. I got an email yesterday from a friend of mine named Darren who lives I-75, and he said, I've got columbine blooming all around my house, and I saw my first hummingbird. This is another flower that hummingbirds love, will pollinate. They can fly upside down. The nectarines are way up top and get that tiny sip of nectar and get pollen all over their face. So that they're like the butterfly of columbine. They also love coral honeysuckle. This is one that's a vine. If you've got an arbor or a fence or a noisy neighbor on the other side, or he's doing something that drives you crazy, you just cover that fence with coral honeysuckle. It blooms from about this point until probably June-ish. But again, long tubular flowers that the hummingbirds will love. And then trumpet creeper is another vine, and these are both native, unlike kudzu. Anyway, these will spread across a wall or an arbor, and this one, the trumpet creeper, it blooms later and is blooming usually into the summer. So it's a good hummingbird friendly plant. Here again, hummingbird buries itself in it. I like crossvine. This is an odd one in that it tends to be up a tree, and but they like crossvine too. I used to love the smell of the blossoms. As I was a kid, I'd be walking home, they'd be on the ground. I'd be, what is that smell? It says it's got a mocha smell. Of course, when I was a kid, I don't know what mocha was. It was a stinky smell to me. But hummingbirds, they follow it. They go to it because it's a reddish tubular flower. Now this is something I had good success with, cardinal flower. I live on a ridge, so I have no real water around me, like a pond or a creek or anything. And cardinal flower really likes damp soil. So I started growing it. It's an annual, so it has to reseed itself. But I started growing it in half whiskey barrels. The whiskey was gone. I have no idea what happened to that. Anyway, the cardinal flower tends to bloom in the fall, and usually around August, September, October, and I've got them in those whiskey barrels in the front of the house, and I can sit there and watch the hummingbirds come just like that. I could have taken that photo, but it was too fast, or they're too fast for my little cell phone. And then jewelweed is yet another one that will grow in damp soil. It's a native plant, and they come to it too. So that's jewelweed. And finally, bee balm, that's the one you saw earlier. So bee balm and jewelweed and cardinal flower all are late blooming. Some of these earlier ones are bloom early, or some of the earlier ones you just saw. Anyway, they love bee balm. Oh, I forgot this one. Yes, and they love marsh swamp milkweed. Now, this is the it's a swamp milkweed, so it does also grow in damp areas near water. I need to try that. Anyway, I usually, when I was at IMS, I would get a lot of calls in May through July. Where are my hummingbirds? Where are my hummingbirds? I don't see them. Where are my hummingbirds? I don't see them. And I said, don't worry, they're there. She's busy. So anyway, that's what's going on. It's nesting season. It's nesting. All birds, different birds nest at different times of the year. That's just that. So I've seen this one time. Male hummingbirds are protective of their feeders. They'll chase away other males. Chase them away, chase them away. I've seen that. A female will come in and they'll chase the female away. And then the female lands up on a branch and says, white throat. Oh my God, it's a girl. You know how guys are. And I've seen this one time. This is a male courting. She'll be sitting there, and he's zoop, 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 right above her head. Zoop, 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 zoop. And he's flashing that gorgeous, look how fast I am. Look how agile I am. Look how terrific I am. I chase away all of the males I am. And look how gorgeous I am. And she goes, yeah. I've seen better. But anyway, she may change her mind, and they may spend all of 5 seconds together. That's it. And she's done. She's absolutely finished. And in Sargent's book, she will even, now she's ready to build a nest and have young. She will even find a hidden place where he can't see it or doesn't seem to look there to build her nest. She doesn't want him around. He drives me crazy. I've got work to do. Get your golf clubs and go to the course. Jeez. Anyway, these are the first hummingbird nests I ever took photographs of, 1979. Yes, I was alive. Anyway, this is what I have to, this is my tribute to Mom. Mom and I learned our birds together from the time I was probably 8 years old. We were always looking at birds, and I had one of those little golden guides of birds and trying to figure things out. And Mom called me, and she lived in Gatlinburg, and she called me in '79 and said, hey, I've got a hummingbird nest in a rose of Sharon. I go, no, Mom, they don't nest low to the ground, they nest much higher. You don't say no to your mother. It's a cardinal rule. You don't say no to your mother. So anyway, I said, okay, Mom, I'll come up. And I came up, and lo and behold, Mom, you're right, that's a hummingbird nest. I got stood up on a step ladder and took the photos. You can't do that. But anyway, they're much higher. They prefer to be 30, 40 feet up where the male hummingbird can't find it. Anyway, this is sycamore. They love sycamores, and tulip trees are their normal beloved because those big leaves. A female will find a downward sloping branch right under a leaf. That's her root. She's smart. And then she builds the nest out of spider silk. So that spider they were robbing earlier is going to get some of its silk taken away too. They weave the silk, and then they put other plant fibers and fluff, like you see on some flowers, like goldfinches like fluff, like a dandelion flower that has a little tiny piece of fluff to carry the seeds away. So that's what they want. And then after going to all that trouble to build that nest, she hides it with lichen, little tiny pieces of lichen to blend it in. She's incredible. This is one of the most fascinating nests in the bird world. And there she said, thank you, Betty. Betty Thompson sent this photograph to me. Again, that is a sycamore tree. and she's sitting there. Now she doesn't, because she nests in June, she doesn't have, not like the bluebirds or the chickadees that nest when it's colder. It's warm in June, so she can leave and go find food, and the eggs will be fine once she's gone. That's how big the, 2 at a time. She's also very economical. She said, my nest is small, I'm busy, I can raise 2. I can raise 2, I can't raise 8. I can't raise, mourning doves do the same thing. You only raise 2 at a time, but the male and female help there. So anyway, that's the, now we're looking to a nest, roughly 1 penny. Now they tell us we don't have any use for pennies anymore, but the next time you go holding a penny, say, my gosh, that's the size of a hummingbird nest. That's it. Ooh-la-dee. Anyway, there's the 2 young ones sitting waiting. Where's mom? Where's mom? Where's mom? We're hungry. We're hungry. And eventually she'll come back because she's out grabbing food for them. She's grabbing food for them. And when she gets back, of course, they're both begging, and she feeds each one a belly full of sticky, wet bugs. She has, the bugs are the protein. You can't raise a little one on just sugar water. So it is sweet. That's why they're insectivores of a sweet tooth. That's what the young ones are raised on. A mouthful of sticky, wet bug. Don't think about that tonight at supper, just stop. Unless you want to. I mean, gosh, it's just flying free protein. Here again is mom feeding one of the young ones. And later, usually by, you're not getting them, I'm not seeing them at the feeder, I'm not seeing them at the feeder. By July, they're up and fledged. She can do 2 nests from late May to June, through June, and then early July, all of a sudden, your hummingbirds are back, because mom has to teach the young ones how to be hummingbirds. And one thing is she teaches them where your bird feeder is. And so they'll come in, and I have seen 2 or 3 at a time. There's probably the mom and a youngster or 2, all sipping. So don't give up. If they really don't seem to be coming in June, she probably is slipping over. Keep it fresh, keep it fresh. This is a young male. When they're first fledged, they both have white throats. But then the males start growing those red gorget feathers, and you'll see spots. That's just the red spots starting to come in. So that's a first-year male. Here's one photograph that I took, and one of the feathers is really coming in strongly. But this is a good tip. If you want to photograph one, kind of natural, not at the feeder like in National Geographic, figure out a way to put up a stick near, because they'll often come to the feeder, drink, and fly over and just sit on the stick. And that's where you're focused on, hoping they fly over and rest there. They tend to go to their favorite perches around the feeder, just to go, man, that's good sugar water. Ooh. And this is what it may look at your house by late August. All of a sudden, migration has started south. So you may still have your hummingbirds that are your hummingbirds, and then the youngsters of your hummingbirds, and then other hummingbirds coming in. Typically at my house, by late August, I've got 8 feeders out. And it looks like this on some days. It's like, wow. But the bulk is just passing through. But so you may see that. You may see fights. I used to have people call me at times, my hummingbirds are fighting. Yes, mom wanted youngsters that were tenacious. She chose a tenacious male, because when they get to Costa Rica and further south, they have to fight for every flower. So female hummingbird wants tough. So you'll see this. I've seen them one time grab a hold of each other and fall to the deck, and then take off. So they're fighting. It's like if you've raised teenage sons, they're fighting in their bedroom. Okay, I'll go up and scold them when it quietens down a little bit. Jeez. But anyway, don't worry about fighting. And this, I love this photo. I took this to one of my aunt's kids back a long time. I think he's in college right now. Anyway, that is the only predator for your hummingbirds is the Chinese praying mantis. And you know how they hunt, they're out there on the edge of a flower, just holding still, and the hummingbird may fly into that flower, and then the praying mantis grabs it. And when a hummingbird is held, it just goes limp. It doesn't resist, it just doesn't know what's, you know, if it's going zzz all of its life and all of a sudden it doesn't know what's happening. You can go to YouTube and type in praying mantis eating a hummingbird. It's not pretty, it's just not pretty. But, so so YouTube is my reference. Anyway. Speaking, I think I spoke about it a little bit earlier, the Hummingbird Festival at Imes is usually in late August when so many hummingbirds are around. That is Mark Armstrong, the person locally, he used to be the curator of birds at the Knoxville Zoo. Now he's retired and he's a federally permitted, Bob Sargent taught him how to do this. So Bob Sargent was the one that figured out the procedure on how to catch hummingbirds. So this is at Imes, held at the home site. I don't know quite the date, but it's usually about the third or last Saturday in August. And he is, the bag hanging in front of him has a hummingbird that was caught by one of his team in it. And again, when it's caught, that hummingbird is perfectly limp. And Mark will get the hummingbird out of the bag, put the little band on it, and then to his partner, typically it's his wife, I think, she'll record the number that he puts on that one hummingbird, and if he can tell, he'll say, it's a female, it's a male, and he weighs the hummingbird. It weighs quite a bit less than 2 dimes in grams, and she records the information. And then what he typically does, this is one thing I love, everybody has to go through a line to get to the front of the table, or it'd be packed. And you just wait your turn, and then when he finishes, he hands the hummingbird to usually a child that's in front of the table. And she's holding the hummingbird. And again, that hummingbird is totally limp. It doesn't know what's happening, its little brain's in, what's going on? Until finally, it takes off. So anyway, I took that one. That's again at the Imes Hummingbird Festival, again, late August. I also wrote an article about Mark for the Tennessee Conservationist magazine. He's the only one in our part of the state that has a federal permit to catch and band and record wintering hummingbirds. Hummingbirds that only visit here in the wintertime. And there's, in the state of Tennessee, there's about, well, I got it here. In the state of Tennessee, after November 15th, if you see a hummingbird at your house after November 15th, that's considered a wintering hummingbird. And it can be a ruby throat. They may hang around longer. I actually counted one January 5th or January 3rd, 2009. Yeah, it was for the 2008 Christmas bird count, but I counted one at a house in my count zone. And so that was in January, so it was counted as one of the few hummingbirds, ruby-throated hummingbirds, found here during the winter months. But we also have rufous hummingbirds, calliope hummingbirds, Allen's hummingbird, black-chinned hummingbird, Anna's hummingbird, and broad-tailed hummingbird. Those may visit the state, and some may visit here. So just keep in mind, if it's still kind of pleasant, you still got some flowers out, keep your hummingbird feeder out longer. Keep it out longer, keep it clean and fresh, and just look at it, just sniff it, always sure the water's fermented. Or it looks cloudy, just routinely change. If your feeder's hanging in the sunlight, it'll sour quicker. If it's in the shade, it kind of lasts a little bit longer. But this is the most common. It tends to, again, we're talking after November 15th, and it's called a rufous hummingbird, and the people I know that get it, UT Orange is appropriate, and the people that get them have big flower gardens that still have flowers in December and January, a few kind of flowers like that. And so the rufous is the most common. I've only seen one rufous in my life, and I saw it in Washington State. I haven't seen one here yet. So that's a rufous hummingbird. And this hummingbird became famous in our part of the world, famous in this our group here. This is a black-chinned hummingbird. It is a western North American species. It has spent weeks here in West Knoxville. In December 2004, about 2 miles from this place?
Yeah, literally right over the hill.
2 miles from this place. I'm speaking to, she's become a folk legend because she's got black-chinned hummingbird at her house. I hoped it would come back last year, it didn't, but this is Kristen. So 2 miles from this place, it was the only black-chinned hummingbird ever found, caught, and banned in Knox County. The only. So that's why she's a folk hero. Until I get one at my house, and then I'll join her as a folk hero. Anyway, she sent me this photo, and it was in December, and I looked and looked and looked, and I thought, that doesn't look like ours, and I bounced it to Mark Armstrong again. I know Mark, and I have his contact information, and I said, this looks different. Can you check this out? I thought it might be a black chin, but black chins are never here. But birds, they do what they want. They just do what they want, thank goodness. So Kristen took this photo and sent it to me, and I bounced it to Mark. And then Mark came over and caught it, and this is a picture of, I think this is your living room, right?
Yep.
Kristen, not that I want to embarrass her, point her out, right here she is.
I'm also wearing a hummingbird shirt.
Yeah, anyway, that's her living room, and he caught the hummingbird again and did the same mechanism, put a little band on it, wrote it down, and all of those numbers are recorded by U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So yes, it's only been in Knoxville and very close here one time that we know of. So if you keep your feeder up, have some nice flowers that kind of bloom late, and before a nice or before a freeze. So anyway, that's Mark putting a little band on it. This is Mark holding it up. Kristen, I assume you took the photo too.
Yep.
She's also a famous photographer. Anyway, it's got a purple iridescent throat. Don't you want to see that? Yes. And we're hopeful that maybe it comes back to Kristen's house this next year. Anyway, what time have I got? Oh, I got time for just a bit of a closer here and some questions. This is moi holding the hummingbird. Again, you don't even feel like you're holding anything. They're soft, and once you hold them, they freeze. And they don't weigh much. So again, this little guy weighs less than 2 dimes. And what happened, I was at ICE when I worked there on a Sunday afternoon, as I recall, and I was going around the visitor center and checking all the hummingbird feeders and putting in fresh sugar water. And I found this poor guy behind us. There was a bench behind the gift shop, and the poor guy was laying on this bench, kind of quivering, like he probably did fly into a window. So I picked him up and gave him some caramel love. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. I hope when I fall and I'm twitching, somebody picks me up. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. And so I was just, come on. You're just a little knocked out. That's okay. You're fine. I've also done the same thing for other birds that didn't quite make it, but this one did. Anyway, I walked through the visitor center to the front because I was going to, and Rex McDaniel was there that day. He was a volunteer photographer, really. When that hummingbird kind of all of a sudden came awake, it hopped up to my thumb. That's my thumb. This is the best photograph ever taken of me. When I pass from this earth, the Knox News will carry my obit and this photo. So this is the best, this is what Stephen Lee wanted. So that little guy jumped up. He was getting his senses back. He was looking around, wondering what the heck I was. But anyway, he stood there, and it's a great photograph. It shows their feet, tiny legs. And then some visitors that were collected around me to see this went over and got sugar water feeder, brought it over to me, and I held it out, and then he left my thumb. Sad departure. He left my thumb and hopped over to the sugar water, had a couple of good drinks, and kind of looked up at me and went, "Thank you, buddy. Thank you, I owe you one, buddy. Thank you, buddy." And Rex took that photo, as I can see, and then this. Rex sent me the photograph that night in an email. He said, "I can't believe I hit the shutter quick enough to get the hummingbird in the frame." But he did, and that's the people that brought me the feeder, and that's little Stevie Lynn going, Shazam! Anyway, I think we finished on time. Are there any questions?